must build a fire with a flame high enough to burn through the rope. When you burn through the rope, you'll ring a bell. Survivors ready? Begin. Sandra, the first to try and get a spark, trying to light it. Becky now following suit. We're gonna go to matches.
All right.
Becky having trouble lighting her match. Sandra nurturing a little fire. After 38 days out here, you should both know how to make fire.
I'm out.
And Sandra is out of matches.
Well, good morning, y'all. Like Ryan said, my name is Josh. Any Survivor fans in the room, raise your hand. I want to see it. Oh, yeah, I love it. 50 seasons, should have a handful in here. I asked this first service, and I got 2 hands. Has anyone applied to be on Survivor in the room? Anybody? No? No hands? Well, you guys aren't as brave as first service. I love the game of Survivor, and if you've never watched it before, in this little clip, at the end of the game, they are supposed to start fire to try to get into the final 3. The rest of the game goes like this. 18, give or take, people are dropped on an island, and they are charged with the responsibility to start fire, create a shelter, catch their own food. They compete in challenges, and then every night, at the end of every night, they vote someone off the tribe. And the goal is to be the last survivor, the final survivor, to make it to the end and to win the grand prize, the money, and also as the best survivor. And it's so interesting to me, and I love it, because you watch people get dropped on an island, and immediately they get into their game. They all have a different strategy. They're going towards one goal, but they all get there a little bit differently, and it brings about the tagline for the show. The tagline is outwit, outplay, and outlast. And what these people do is anything that allows them to be the final, the last one. It doesn't matter what it is. They'll backstab, they'll lobby for their game, and they'll do whatever it takes. They'll throw people under the bus to get to the end. Now, why I love this show is one, because when you watch a lot of other reality TV or game shows, like, you can kind of tell, like, oh yeah, this is a plan, or they're rigging it. You can't rig, aside from a little bit of like editing magic to make it like tolerable to watch, you can't rig dropping people and pitting them against each other. There's something about the competitive spirit of people and their natural behavior going against each other, so it feels really real and authentic to me. The second reason I like Survivor is because it is a microcosm of human behavior. It's a small picture into the world of like 18 people, 18 give or take, going against each other, and our behavior, their behavior comes out as a result of it. And for us, you can look at that and say, this is human behavior in a small scale in a game, but when you zoom out, you start to realize that that's not too different from the way that the general public, the general human behavior is in our world. And if we're not careful and pay attention to our lives, these 3 things, outwitting, outlasting, and outplaying, they start to become present in our lives. And we start to do things that line us up to win, to succeed, to do things in light of whatever anyone else is doing. Doesn't matter what they're doing, but if I am doing my life my way, playing my game, then I'm gonna do whatever it takes. It doesn't matter if that affects someone else. And I think when we live this way, when we try to survive through life this way, we get caught up in drifting one of 2 ways. Well, the first way is we might drift towards busyness. When we try to survive in our life and thrive in our life in our own way, in our own strategy, we start to fill up our schedule. We get value from doing all the sorts of different things. We chase after success. We chase after the promotion. We chase after the money. And we think that if our life is busy and we're just doing stuff, then it's valuable and it's full. And maybe if this is you, you might use the phrase like, I can't ever just sit still. I have to always be doing something. I have to be going. We drift towards busyness. And the opposite side of the aisle is we drift towards laziness. It's scaling back. It's not having a lot of motivation to do anything. Maybe you've used the phrase, I'm just working for the weekend. I'm trying to get through Monday through Friday, to get to the weekend, to relax. I feel like it's the removal of things in our life that are heavy or burdensome or that we're responsible for in order to hit a point of like relaxation, in order to hit a point of, okay, I can just rest or relax. But honestly, we know that life is not meant to be without work or without responsibility or without things that can be challenging sometimes. So for you, I'd ask you, what is that? And sometimes it can be hard to label ourselves as busy or as lazy. It's not easy to say, yeah, I'm a lazy person. So I formed it in the form of a question, and I want to ask you, do I tend to add or subtract things to gain satisfaction? Do you tend to add things in your life to get satisfaction out of your life? And the more that you add, the more that you add, the more that you add, the more satisfied that you feel? Or do you subtract? And you get things out of the way and you remove obstacles that keep you from being relaxed, that keep you from, just living life in a peaceful, gentle way. For me, this is 100% the direction that I lean towards. I lean towards lazy, and as hard as it is to say, I will drift into laziness if I don't catch myself. And a couple examples in my life that I've looked and seen and reflected over that. The first one was in college, where I had a rhythm and routine almost every single day. I'd wake up, I'd go to class, I'd do my work right after class, I'd go to the rec center, and then I'd watch a movie. And food was in there because I was a college student every step of the way. But that was my day. School, rec, movie, school, rec, movie. And I'd do that for days and weeks and months. And eventually, like a semester would go by. And I'd reflect over this last couple of months and be like, what have I been doing? What have I been caring about? Fast forward to now my adult years, and I have a family and a wife and kids, and I can find myself getting into a similar routine where I'll wake up, I'll drink coffee and make breakfast for everyone, I'll go to work, I'll come back, I'll hang out with the kids for a couple hours, put them to bed, hang out with my wife, and then go to bed myself. And it's like, okay, that's not bad at face value, that's a solid day, but again, as a day and a week and a month, and maybe even longer goes by, I start to wonder, and at some point, I wake up and I realize, what have I been caring about? What have I been doing? And my life just feels like it's on autopilot. I don't know if you can relate to this, but you're just like drifting and coasting through life, removing anything that's hard or trying to remove anything that's hard to get to the bare minimum of getting by. And when you wake up, I ask, have I been caring about my wife? Have I been caring about my kids? Have I been caring about my job as much as I have needed to? Or am I just there? Am I just existing? Am I just present, coasting on autopilot? For you, whichever side of the aisle that you lean on, laziness or busyness, I think that ultimately results in us getting distracted. That we get distracted from what matters most. We get caught up in adding. We get caught up in adding to our lives and filling it up. We get caught up in subtracting and taking things away. And ultimately, it takes our gaze, our focus off of the things that are most important in our lives. And we know that the things that are most important, but we kind of get caught off guard or pulled off the line anyway. A distraction is anything that gets in the way of what is most important. And when we walk through life distracted, we neglect the things that are most important, and we end up getting to a place wondering, how did we get here? Where is the purpose in my life? Why am I doing the things that I'm doing? Am I just trying to get by, or am I trying to win something, and at the end of our life, feel like, well, what was it even I was trying to win anyway? I want to tell you a story about two guys that maybe you've never heard of before in your life. The story was told in a book that I'm reading currently called The Art of Spending Money by Morgan Housel. And I thought this story was super insightful, and I want to share it with you. So in 1968, there was this race put on by the London newspaper called the Golden Globe Race. And this race was a single manned sailboat race around the world. Starting in London, they'd go all the way around the world, land back in London, and no one had ever done it to this point in time before this point. So the London newspaper puts this on. They get a handful of sailors that are going to participate, one of them being this guy, Robert Crowhurst. Robert Crowhurst had ambitions of going in this race, participating in this race, and hopefully gaining a little bit of fame, because Robert was incredibly ambitious with his life. He wanted to do well at everything, and he was quoted on record saying, "I view life as a game, trying to win, trying to earn my way through my life." And the unfortunate part about Crowhurst's life is that he was almost always a professional failure in everything that he did. He wanted success, he wanted ambition, but he failed at most things that he did. So he thought, if I enter into this race, I'm gonna carve my way out to success, to fame, to glory, and everyone will know who I am. The only problem was, Crowhurst didn't have any money, he didn't have a boat, and he wasn't a sailor. So he didn't have any experience in the craft. But somehow he convinced a wealthy businessman to back him, to buy him a boat under the terms that if he didn't finish the race, he had to repay the businessman back at the end and give back what he had invested in him. So the race is approaching, and Crowhurst tries to get a little bit of experience. He buys a boat, he's prepped for the race, and past his better judgment and his wife's better judgment, who say, "You are probably not equipped to go on this race," and he believed that he wasn't really equipped to go on this race. He said, "There's too much on the line," because at this point, everyone knew there's an unexperienced sailor going on this trip around the world. We're gonna pay attention to him, and if he quit then, well, then everyone would know. So he sets off, and from the start, there's failure written all over his story. He takes off, and 2 weeks into the trip, he's half the distance of the other sailors behind, and his boat is already leaking. He still has most of the world to cover. He's so far behind, and he's not gonna make it. He knows he's not gonna make it. So he devises a plan to make it seem like he's competing in the race. So what he does is he starts 2 logbooks. The first logbook will be his projected distance covered over time that he's gonna report over radio back to London and let them know, hey, I'm this far, I'm this far, I'm this far. While the second logbook is recording his coordinates as he drifts about in the Atlantic Ocean. So one is tracking where he should be, one is tracking where he actually is, and as everyone comes around to the most southern part of South America, he's gonna join back in line, and he's gonna finish the race with everybody else. So he joins back in line, but he's smart enough to know, I can't be in first place, because if I'm in first place, they're gonna find me out. Someone's gonna look and say, you won the race, let's investigate your logbook, and they're gonna find that he was a fraud. So what he does is he places himself in second place behind the leader and says, if I come in second, I'll still get to keep this glory, this reward of finishing this race. I don't have to give back the boat or the money to the businessman, I'll be set free. Well, the guy in first place, who's a little bit ahead of him, catches wind that there's someone behind him, and he starts pushing his boat faster and faster and faster until his boat eventually falls apart, and he's found a couple of days later drifting on a lifeboat in the middle of the Atlantic. And now, Crowhurst, going into the last step, the last leg of the race, is in first. And victory is at hand, and we'd imagine, or he would imagine, that's a good thing, right? That he's gonna get some fame, there's gonna be some glory. He got a call from London, and they were telling him, hey, we got everyone lined up for you. There's helicopters, there's cannons, there's gonna be a parade. We're gonna celebrate you for being the first man to ever sail around the world. But in his heart, he knew something was missing and something was off. That his victory would be unsatisfying because it wasn't a real victory. He tried to pave his own path into finishing the race and getting a little bit of glory and redeeming himself. And in his own efforts to try to make this all happen, he realized it's an empty way of living. It's an empty way of surviving, and it's an empty way of satisfaction. And unfortunately for Robert Crowhurst, 11 days go by and the race is over, and they find his boat floating in the middle of the Atlantic, and he is nowhere to be found because he realized what his life at that point had amounted up to. He couldn't withstand the shame and the scrutiny that he was gonna face if he got back there and got found out. And it didn't sit right with him. And unfortunately, so many of our lives reflect that of Robert Crowhurst, that we fabricate this story. We try to make it on our own. We try to pave the way for ourselves under our own strength and our own doing. And we're left wondering, why isn't this fulfilling? Why isn't this good enough? Why isn't this satisfying me? And millions of people in our world, billions of people in our history have walked this path and come up empty-handed when we try to do it on our own. And it's a sad story, and life ends up being sad if that's the case. But in the middle of that, in the middle of all these people, all of us trying to find our own path, exists an invitation. An invitation that says, there's a path cut out for you if you would just choose to go down this path. The invitation is simply follow me. Follow me to find purpose. Follow me to find satisfaction. Follow me to find the way through life. Jesus of Nazareth stepped into this world, the Son of God, into the messiness of our lives and said, do you want a full life? Follow me. Do you want to thrive in your life? Follow me. Do you want to have satisfaction? Do you want to survive in your life? Follow me. I've set the way forward for you. And if you choose to follow me, you will see what that life is like. The Apostle Paul in the first century lived and witnessed the work of Jesus and the spreading of the gospel of the good news that Jesus had brought. And he explains and expounds upon what it means to live a life of love and following Jesus. And he brings this and defines it so well for us. And what I want you guys to do is to, as you're listening and reading, imagine that you're telling or instructing your children or someone younger than you if you don't have children, this is the way to live. This is the best way to live. And then flip that back on yourself and say, this should be, if you're a Jesus follower, this should define what it means to be a Jesus follower. If I am following Jesus, these things should be coming out of me from an overflow naturally. And if you're not a Jesus follower in the room, if you're not a Christian and you're just joining us, I would invite you, just investigate this. Listen, take it in, ask yourself, would life be better if this was a part of it? Would the world be better if everyone took this personally? Paul outlines it in Romans 12. He says, love must be sincere. Hate what is evil, cling to what is good. Your love should be authentic. It should mean something. It shouldn't be fake. It shouldn't be something that you're just trying to do. It should be something that is coming from an overflow. And he says to cling to what is good. As a Jesus follower, the goodness in us should be like glue. It should be stuck to us. It should be the natural attributes that flow out from us. He says, how do you do that? How does love express itself in action when we're clinging to what is good? He goes on to say, be devoted to one another in love. Honor one another above yourself. Never be lacking in zeal. Zeal is this pairing of haste and diligence. And when you put these two together, it fights against busyness because on one hand, we don't want to just fill up our schedule. We want to be diligent about what we're choosing to do, but it also fights against laziness because this zeal keeps us from just not doing anything. We're doing things on purpose for a purpose. He says, honor one another above yourselves, never be lacking in zeal, but keep your spiritual fervor serving the Lord. He goes on to say, be joyful in hope, patient in affliction, faithful in prayer. Share with the Lord's people who are in need, practice hospitality. Isn't this what we want? Love, joy, hospitality, being around one another. And he's speaking to his fellow Jesus followers, his fellow Christians, and saying, this is how we should love one another. But then he flips the script and said, this is also how you should treat people who don't believe what you believe, who might believe something different than you believe, who might even hate you for what you believe. He goes on and he says, bless those who persecute you, those people who dislike you. Blessed and do not curse. Rejoice with those who rejoice, mourn with those who mourn, live in harmony with one another, promote unity amongst all people, not just people who are like you. He goes on and he says, do not be proud, but be willing to associate with people of low position. Do not be conceited. Do not repay anyone evil for evil. Forgive. Don't just throw back at them. Don't come back at them. Just love them. Forgive them. Do what's best for them with them in mind. He finishes out by saying, be careful to do what is right in the eyes of everyone. If it is possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. And what I think we'd all read through that and say, yeah, hospitality, rejoicing, love, peace, we're with people when they need it. We're at peace with everyone. There's a certain sense of unity. Isn't that the life that we all want? I'd imagine that most of us would say, yeah, I disagree with that. Life's typically better when those things are a part of it. The issue is, and what we come to believe is, those are the things that we have to try really hard to do. And they become law in our life. And to be a Christian, we just have to try harder to do those things. But in the same way, when we try to make our own way and our own plan, we oftentimes fall short. Don't get me wrong, it's important to do our best to love and be patient. But when we're being patient, it's good until we run out of patience, and then we get frustrated. It's good to forgive someone who does us wrong until it's really hard to, and then we get bitter, and then we get angry. At some point, our own efforts hit an end point, and it's not about trying anymore because we've run out of all that we can do. Rather, I would invite us all to not look at this as law, but to look at this way of living as the reward. That if we all agree, if you would agree that this way of living is the best way of living, then that in itself is a reward that following Jesus brings into our life. That kind of living is the overflow of being with him. And if we can view this as a reward, then we can start focusing on what allows us to overflow with that. And the next couple minutes, that's what we're gonna focus on and talk about, is what sets us up to receive this reward of love and goodness in our life because we have placed ourselves in the right position. We're actually going to go back in just a minute to the beginning of Romans 1 because Paul outlines this, but I want to take a quick detour to Matthew chapter 11 as Jesus is giving a sentiment to his followers, and I think he's giving this word to the people who are directly in front of him, but I also think anybody who has read about it or learned from him or studied him since, I think this is meaningful for everybody if we can take this to heart. So he's speaking to his disciples and he's letting them know, he's just coming off an experience where he's been to 2 cities in ancient Israel. And he's done miracles, he's taught the good news, he's done all these things, but they have chosen not to repent, not to follow his lead, not to follow him and listen to him. They've just gone on their own way and continue doing what they're doing. And Jesus rebukes them and says, I just want you to take hold of the truth that I'm giving you. And then he looks at his disciples and says, this is what this means for you. This is how you should repent. This is how you should live. And he looks at his Father in heaven. He says, Father, I praise you. You know that I am the only one that knows who you are because I have been with you. Before I was on this earth, I was with you. And I know you and I know what you're like. And I pray, Father, that anybody that wants to know you would come to me. That anyone that wants to know you, the Father in heaven, would come to me and see what you're like because I've come to demonstrate what my Father in heaven is like. So Jesus then gives this instructive. He says, come to me. He says, come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. He doesn't specify what the weariness or the burden is. He doesn't say, it's this specific thing in your life. I think he's talking about the general wearisome and burden of our life that we all carry. That when we try to walk through life alone, it's like, yeah, this is heavy and this weighs a lot and this sucks the life out of me. And sometimes we just feel like, yeah, we want to give up. We want to stop. It's just too much. He says, take your burdens, take your weariness and bring it to me. And I will give you rest. I will give you rest that is better than anything. And he's not talking about a rest that is just stopping work altogether. He's not saying stop doing anything that's hard, stop doing anything that's purposeful. He's saying, I want you to have rest in me so that you can go back to work and do things with a renewed energy, with a renewed purpose. And as you walk with me, you will start to see that your work, your profession that you do, you'll go back with a renewed energy. And your family, as you step back into your marriage and step back into your kids' lives, that you will have a renewed energy to do what's good for them, good for all of you. And you'll be excited to get back to work and doing what's purposeful and meaningful if you choose to follow me, if you choose to come to me and gain rest. And we know it's not just stopping of work because what he goes on to say, he says, take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls, for my yoke is easy and and my burden is light. Now, I had read this for a long time, or a lot of times, and I used to think a yoke was an egg yolk, and that didn't make any sense to me. I tried to connect the pieces, and it just didn't work until I found out that this is actually what a yoke was. Cows or oxen would place or have this wooden tool placed on their necks to be able to plow the fields, to do this good work, and they would bear the burden together as they're pulling this plow and taking care of the fields. And Jesus is saying, take my yoke. He's saying, come alongside me. I'm in this yoke. I'm doing the work. Now, if you would just come beside me, your burden is light and easy, and you will have rest. If you watch me, if you walk with me, if you see my gentleness and spirit and my humbleness, you will start to adopt those things. Those things will grow in you. And life, the things that are sucking the life out of you, won't feel as heavy anymore. And there will still be hard work to do because following Jesus is hard work. What we do in light of Jesus' instructions is hard, but it will come with a renewed purpose. And he will be walking alongside of you, and we're learning from you, and we're in the presence of Jesus when we take upon his yoke and we walk through life with him and following his lead. Now, earlier, I said this story is about two guys who maybe we've never heard of. The first one was Robert Crowhurst, and the second was Bernard Moitessier. He's a Frenchman who was an experienced sailor. He had been sailing for 50 years. He was really good. He was really renowned, and he loved the art of sailing, if you will. But he hated what had happened to sailing. He hated the commercialization. He's like, I just want to sail for the fun of it, for the joy of it, because I found a peace in this. And he writes in his diary, and I think this is so revealing of what sometimes the ways of the world and our own ways push, what it leads us to do. He writes this. He says, I really felt sick at the thought of getting back to Europe, back to the snake pit. It's so graphic. He goes in, and it's so clear that there is something brewing that is not good for us. I'm really fed up with the false gods. He goes on to say, always lying in wait, spider-like, eating our liver, sucking our marrow. I charge the modern world. That's the monster, trampling the soul of men. That he got this picture of this race that he was in. And he's like, this isn't what it's all about. It's not just getting to the finish line. It's just not doing things by the rules that people have set in place to try to get them to do what they want. He said, there's something deeper than that. And at some point, the joy and the hope and the peace is stolen out of that. So as he's coming down around Cape Horn, the southernmost part of South Africa, he writes and sends a message back to London. He says, today is March 18th. I'm continuing nonstop towards the Pacific Islands because I am happy at sea and perhaps to save my soul. He says, I have a different destination. I have a different set of rules that I am living by. And he sails all the way to Tahiti, lands on a beach, builds himself a house, and lives off the land, and finds peace in Tahiti. And the purpose of me telling that story is not for us to get to Tahiti, to find peace and joy in life. And that's the best part, although that is pretty good. The purpose is to say when we play by our standards, when we run the race, when we try to survive on our own, ultimately we end up feeling purposeless, empty, without direction. But when we play by a new set of rules, something that is entirely different, when we do it because we love something so deeply, it wells up out of us and we suddenly know where we're going. Surviving then turns from a weighty obligation, the weighty things in our life, the heavy things that just bear down on us, those things turn into a peaceful privilege. And our life suddenly becomes lighter because we're in the presence of Jesus and he is relieving these burdens for us. It's not just perfectly easy, but there is a renewed energy behind it. And this is what Jesus is inviting us into. He said, take my yoke, for the burden is light and it's easy. I want you to walk with me and you will have a renewed purpose. So, going back to the beginning of Romans 12, We look at Paul's instruction to take this idea that Jesus is saying, come to me, be with me, follow me, you will find purpose. And he says, this is the way that you do it. You need to be with me, but this is how you be with Jesus. He says this at the beginning of Romans 12. Therefore, I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship, that we are supposed to come to him and say, God, not my will, but yours. Not my way, but your way. Because your way produces satisfaction. Your way produces full life. He says, don't conform to the patterns of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Conforming to the patterns of the world is chasing after money, chasing after success, chasing after comfort and relaxation. The last series that we were in, we talked a lot about false idols and the things that steal our attention. Don't conform into the ways of the world that promise satisfaction. Rather, be transformed by the renewing of your mind on a daily basis. Renew your mind of what's true. Bring yourself closer to Jesus. Properly place yourself in the presence of Jesus. And if you do that, he says, then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will. When we're with him, we'll be able to understand where he's leading us and what he wants us to do, because we are in a trusting, loving relationship with him. And all those good things, the love demonstrated, it will ooze out of us. So for us, how do we get here? If the reward is living a life of love that is demonstrated out of us, and the way that we receive that reward is being with Jesus, we have to renew our mind. Renewing our mind looks like putting things in place to put us in the presence of Jesus. And if you're like me, this can be really hard because our days are full. We have lots of things on the calendar, lots of things that are going through our mind. How do we practice? I want to give you 2 practical things that we can just create a little bit of space for Jesus. And the first thing is something that we all would probably appreciate more of, but oftentimes choose to resist, and that is sleep. So many of us are like, yeah, I'm tired all the time. I could use a little bit more sleep, but yet we still try to squeeze more into the day. We still try to resist that. And we think that our bodies are just like a shell, and that doesn't affect our mind and our heart. But what's true is our faith and the way that we operate, the way that God designed us, is everything is intertwined. And if we don't take care of our physical body as well as our mental and spiritual body, then everything else will lack because of that. And if sleep is a challenge for you, and you're like, yeah, I average 4 hours a night or 5 hours a night, the odds are the next day, whatever follows that day, that it's harder to love someone, that it's harder to be patient, that we have a shorter fuse with people when they do something that we don't want, that it's easier to get frustrated and anger. So taking care of our bodies, taking care of our physical needs, and saying, I need sleep. That's part of how I was created, and this is a struggle for me because I'm a night owl, and I love to stay up and watch games, and the NBA conference finals were on last night, and it was a challenge for me to be like, okay, I really want to stay up, but I got to wake up and do this and be here. It's a challenge because things get in the way, but if you're like my life, my kids don't have a snooze button at 5:30 in the morning. And that means I end up getting 5 hours of sleep if I stay up till midnight, and it's a struggle. And my invitation for all of us is to say, what does it look like? To take the opportunity to say, God, I have my limits. You have created me with limits. I'm not meant to be up 24 hours a day. I'm meant to surrender and give up my day and say, this is the end of my day, and I've done all that I can do. And then you wake up the next day and you proceed with life, but you stop and say, I need to get sleep because that is required of me. And we give that control to God and say, I'm gonna rest my body. So the action step, the practice is whatever you get normally, and this may sound super simple, but I think it can make a huge difference, is having incremental growth that transforms us over time. If you get 4 or 5 hours of sleep, try to get 6 per night this week. If you get 6 or 7, try to get 8. Get enough that you feel rested physically so that you can be prepared for whatever the following day has at hand. Now, if you get 10 or 11 or 12 hours, maybe you're overdoing it just a little bit too much. Dial it back. I think it's just something to pay attention to. to be able to set ourselves up for what the next day holds and what Jesus is leading us to do in the next day. And that's where the second practice comes in, which is silence. We did this earlier, just a minute of silence. My invitation to you is to set aside just 5 minutes. 5 minutes in your day to eliminate the noise. My life is full of noise. I'm always taking content. I'm always trying to plan for the next thing or solve a problem or what are we making for dinner. All these sort of things that are filling my mind, that are creating noise and distraction in my life. But when I can set 5 minutes aside to sit still, to just be, to eliminate distractions, something happens in me where I can know, like, okay, I have a direction. I've thought about just my day ahead of me, not the week, not the month. I've thought about my day and where Jesus might be leading me in this day. So whatever that is for you, if that's waking up 5 minutes early, if that's staying up 5 minutes later, if that's taking a break during work, your lunch break, whatever that is, 5 minutes. Maybe it's nap time if you have kids. Just eliminating distractions and sitting in the silence and listening. And maybe this is helpful to prompt you as you sit in silence. If you choose to do that, ask these two questions. Lord, who do you want me to become? And Lord, what do you want me to do? Lord, who do you want me to become? What kind of person do you want me to be today? Where are you leading me and what do you want me to do with that? What do you want me to do? How do you want me to lead my kids? How do you want me to lead my spouse? How do you want me to live? How do you want me to work in my job? And just sit and listen and be present. Because when we practice being in the presence of Jesus or creating space for Jesus, we're going to be able to take upon the yoke that he's inviting us in to experience the peace that he has to offer. And then the reward boils up, bubbles up in our life. And it comes out of us. And the life that we want, of patience, of love, of peace, of joy, is on display for us, but for everybody else in our life. So we need to practice being in the presence or creating space to be in the presence of Jesus. And what happens is what Paul writes down in Romans 12 at the back half of that section. And I just want to read it again as we wrap up our time. I want to read this again in a different translation because I feel like it fits in well. And this is the reward that I hope that we can all grasp to, that might make our lives more satisfying, that might make the world a better place. Paul says, we don't just pretend to love others. We really love them. We hate what is wrong. We hold tightly to what is good. We love each other with genuine affection and take delight in honoring others. We aren't ever lazy. We work hard and serve the Lord enthusiastically. We rejoice in our confident hope. We're patient in trouble, and we keep on praying. When God's people are in need, we're ready to help them. We're always eager to practice hospitality. We bless those who persecute us. We don't curse them. We pray that God will bless them. We're happy with those who are happy, and we weep with those who weep. We live in harmony with each other. We don't be too proud to enjoy the company of ordinary people. And he wraps it up and says, and don't think you know it all. Never pay back evil with evil. We do things in such a way that everyone can see you are honorable. We do all that we can to live in peace with everyone. When we make space and practice being in the presence of Jesus, take upon his yoke that is light, that he carries that burden for us, and we follow him, this is what is produced. And I want to invite all of us to take part in that life that I think most of us would say, yeah, I want that. Love to pray for us. Heavenly Father, we're just grateful for your words. We're grateful for your instructions, for your invitation for us to follow you, and for the peace that you have to offer us. I pray whatever is burdening us in life, I pray that whatever is heavy, I pray that whatever is stealing our joy and stealing our energy, that we would be able to find a way to give up our own way and give it to you. That we would submit to your will and your way, and that we would renew our minds daily to be in your presence and see what happens when we do follow your way. God, we're grateful to be in your presence. We love you. It's in your name we pray. Amen. Y'all, thanks for hanging out this morning. We will see you back here next Sunday.